visit, and we want to take to Psalm 68, verse 1. And everything in general knows that when their army has been in a level of uncertainty, it falls. Every coach and every team knows that when the team goes into a break that isn't well managed, then level falls. That's why every athlete knows that after the great race, they need to practice. And if you could see that some in the news, some of those who what the great athletes were doing in their time, too, had mini gyms in their houses. And this is because they know that if they stop, they would lose. And the same happens with a car, the same happens with an organ in your body, the same happens with the church. And we know that when we've been standing and stood still for over 100 days, 3 months, and it's necessary for us to stand up with the same strength and even more, because God takes on that time to take charge of us. And if we've seen certain things that perhaps have made us go through difficulties, and that we've gone through we've fallen in certain traps, God wants us to stand up with strength. So now the Psalm 68 verse 1, it says that God stands up and let his enemies be dispersed. So when that happens, they flee from his presence. And in verse 2 it says, blow them away like smoke. Melt them like wax in a fire. Let the wicked perish in the presence of God. But with regards to his people, he says, but let the godly rejoice. Let them be glad in God's presence. Let them be filled with joy. So now God says to us that when he stands up, and he will stand up, he's going to rise and his enemies will be scattered. But in other moments in the Bible, he says that Israel and his people and his group wouldn't be able to be in front of his people. And that you can see in Joshua 7, in verses 12 and 13, where it says that they're not going to be able to be in front of their enemies if they didn't stand up and get rid of certain things. So if we go as a base text for today, you go Joshua 7, 1 forward, to get ready for the next step in the battle. So last week when we were going through the first for the sermon, we were talking about continuing. We were talking about continuing to fight. You can't stop. It's not the moment to rest. And perhaps we say that we come back and now we're ready to the new normal. And now the laws have been relaxed to be able to go out, to be out in homes and continue go back to our regular lives. And that gives us a sense of rest. But for us, the church, it's not a sensation of rest, at least certainly not here. Instead, it's a calling to continue going forward. And we said it last week, that it's the moment to continue. And we're saying, what's the next step? What's going to make you now that you're out? What are you going to do now that you're ready to continue with regular life? What things can we implement? What things are we going to do? What are the next steps? We have to do a new reimagining, and many homes are going to have to be rebuilt. Some went through difficult crises during the pandemic due to different things that they lived. And we want to stand up and we want to come up with more strength and this desire to come up with more power. And he wants us to take this example on the book of Joshua in 7 verse 1. And it's a moment where Israel has just finished a great battle, a great victory in Jericho. They just conquered and brought down the walls. And then it comes a moment where the people the nation comes into a moment of rest, given to them by themselves, not through the situation. They decided to do it. They decided to come down, and it's not that they stopped next to the water and they threw themselves in the water. No, they rested, as in they stopped fighting. And because of that, there came a destruction. But also, that destruction came because of being leaked in league with something that they had within them. And then last week we went through a couple of things of steps that we had to go through. And there's some the battles that we went through that we have to let go of. And it's those battles that we acquired during the pandemic. So if we go to Joshua 1, the Bible says that in from chapter 7, he says, but Israel, so there was a man that was called Achan. And said, but Israel violated the instruction about the things set apart from the Lord. A man named Achan had stolen some of these dedicated things, so the Lord was very angry with the Israelites. Achan was the son of Carmi, a descendant of Zimri, son of Serah, for the tribe of Judah. So it says that all the Israelites were guilty because of that man. So before the man, because he had taken the things that God had ordained to have been destroyed. So they were in a position, in a moment that was very clear, that was very specific, that because of one person, everyone suffered. And we don't think that it should be like that. Obviously, we in this moment, because of one, we don't all have to suffer. And not in the circumstances, but we want to be ready and for us to all work together and working and walking in the same sense, in the same team, in the same desire to continue. And so no one stays behind. So nothing stops God's camp. Because if anything stops God's camp, then we all stop. So they needed to leave certain things, and that person didn't leave some of the things. And it was his desire to having more. So we go to the story on what it tells us in the book of Joshua. In verse 2, he says, Joshua sent some of his men from Jericho to spy out the town of Ai. So they had to conquer another town called Ai, and it seems like it was a very small town compared to Jericho. So compared to Jericho, it would have been like a child's play. So now they had shown their military might to take over Jericho, and now they were finding themselves before Ai, a much smaller town, much smaller enemy. So perhaps you think that these 3-4 months that you've lived, that you think, yeah, you've taken over that battle and you've won that battle, and you think, well, the battle that's coming next is a lot simpler. But if you listen to what it says, so it's again, Joshua went to his son, to men of Jericho, to spy out the son of Ai, east of Bethel, near Beth-aven. When they returned, they told Joshua, there's no need for all of us to go up there. It won't take more than 2,000 or 3,000 men to attack Ai. So I'm saying that's not enough. We don't need to put the effort in. We're ready. It's fine. Relax. And they're not saying, we're not talking about the virus. We're talking about the next stage that they had to live. God was going to take them, and he was going to give them the promised land, and he was going to continue in the next steps. And this is the something that this is what the spies said, those who went to scout out Ai. They said it's not enough, it's not necessary. It's not necessary to put the effort in, for everyone to put the effort in. So just 2,000 or 3,000 is more than enough. So they're saying, don't worry, don't send everyone, they can rest. Because of those who defend there are only a few of them. Don't give all our people struggle to go up there. So they had the perception that the next battle, they had low perception of the next battle, because they didn't think it was going to be anything, because they relaxed. They didn't think, they didn't need that, and they needed all the strength from the team, from the battle, from the previous battle. So verse 2 says, so approximately 3,000 warriors were sent, but they were soundly defeated. The men of Ai chased the Israelites from the town as far as the quarries. They killed about 36 who were retreating down the slope. The Israelites were paralyzed with fear at this turn of events, and their courage melted away. They lost their courage, and they had fear, and the nation continued being paralyzed with fear of losing their courage and starting to say, God isn't with us. God hasn't come for us. they started damaging and changing that concept of the victories of God. So in verse 6 to us, that Joshua and the elders of Israel tore their clothing in dismay, threw dust on their heads, and bowed face down in the ground before the ark of the Lord until evening. So verse 7 says, Then Joshua cried out, O sovereign Lord, why did you bring us across the Jordan River if you are going to let the Amorites kill us? And he started saying, Lord, but why? Why did you do this? Why did you bring me to church? Why did you made me put in the effort? Why did I pray? Why did I insist? Why did I tithe? Why did I give? Why did I put the effort in? And they started complaining about the previous battles. And it says, did to bring us to if you're going to let the Amorites kill us? So they were saying that they started even thinking that that God was even punishing them. I think, yeah, this is a punishment from God. The Lord is making us go through these trials, as if the Lord was a hard Pharaoh and did the work of the devil. The Lord isn't like that. He's generous. He forms character. He's saying, if only we had been content and stayed on the other side. In verse 8, Lord, what can I say now that Israel has fled from its enemies? He's saying, what are people going to say? In who have I believed? The Canaanites and all the other people living in the land hear about it. They will surround us and wipe our name off the face of the earth. And then what will happen to the honor of your great name? So they saw themselves completely destroyed, lost everything. And they think, Lord, but that's happening to me. But if I come to do things properly, why have we lost this battle? What is it that's happening? Lord, all these times, have they been in vain? And these situations that we've gone through, and everything that we've lived through, the crises with my job, and everything that we've lived, and everything that I've fought for in this marriage, now we've lost everything. They sensed that they had completely fallen. And behind the fall, there comes a massive loss of courage. Behind that comes an apostasy. And behind apostasy comes anarchy. In verse 10, the response of the Lord, he says, But the Lord said to Joshua, Get up. Why? So before their lack of faith, God says, Get up. The fear, the doubt, the insecurity had filled their hearts of all his people. They felt completely broken down. When they themselves had taken the decisions of sending a few people because they stopped putting the effort in. What do you do? Why are you lying on your face like this? Why are you complaining? Stand up. Why are you complaining? In verse 11 it says, Israel has sinned and broken my covenant. They broke the contract, the everything that I made with them. They have stolen some of the things that I commanded must be set apart from me. And they have not only stolen them, but have lied about it and hidden the things among their own belongings. They knew that God had taken to destroy one thing. And that's when he says in verse 12, that is why the Israelites are running from their enemies in defeat. And imagine what a huge lesson we learn in the book of Joshua. Until they let go of the things that did not belong to them, the things that they had adopted in their own lives. In this case, it was physical. And one of them, within the battle, in the middle of the battle, went in and took things or gold that took things for himself, maybe carpets or trinkets or something, a couple of things that they liked, things that made him feel like he was home. And they looked after them, and that was the sin. And he made the people fall back. And he made the camp fall back. God wanted a great battle, the next battle with them. But they lost faith, and they continued through that to feel that they didn't have to fight again. I don't know if this is what's happening to you, and if one way you feel like you've lost the strength, that in between all of this 3 months, I want you to know that this is the second preaching, and this is a series that we're going through called Transformed or Deformed, because this transformation that's happened in the few months has either transformed us or deformed us. How did you come out after all of this? Did you come out more spiritual? Did you leave with your marriage? Did you leave with as a best father or worse father? How did you come out? More spiritual, more prayer? Did you leave with more strength? Or did you come out completely just nothing? What is it that's happening to you in this time? And that's what he wants to try and localize and get out, because I've seen it in the church. I've seen the five concepts that I've seen happening, and I see it with some of the members, and I've been seeing it being taken out. And I see that God is now blowing the horn just for us to move to the next step, for us to be able to do it. He says, because of this, says, so our enemies are now no longer flesh and blood. It's taking a position in your life in work way. Our enemies are those battles that you haven't been able to fight, those internal fights, the inability to stay still, your desires, the goals that God has put you, that there's something that's there stopping you, and they're saying you won't be able to do this before your enemies. And what we want to do now is to continue with more strength. I know that there are many churches that haven't even opened. I don't know if it's because they need many things, but we don't want the same thing to happen to us. And we've been in the fight exactly so that we can continue, and we can continue conquering the promised land. And with great risks in many aspects. But we want to do it because we have a lot to fight for. We have a lot to stand up for and to fight over. And it's our life, and it's your lives. And that's why we want to continue. And continuing that same strength to reach for more. And we're waiting, we said it last week. What is your next step? What course are you going to do? What things are you going to do to change? There's difficult economical challenges are coming. And we're saying that those challenges, for them not to affect us. And many of us are changing places, they're changing jobs, they're changing lives. And that's why we have to go and stand up and move to continue walking. It's not a time to relax. It's not a time to stop. It's a time to stand up with more strength. It's a time to conquer. It's a time to go out. And it's time again. Perhaps the time to stop, to relax, was before the pandemic. Before. Not during, we didn't stop. And you could see that we didn't. But now we continue, and they say, oh, but Pastor, let us rest. No, there's no time. We have to continue. Not the weeks before, we went hard for everything for you to be able to come, to have a place that's bigger. Because it's not time to relax. It's time to stand up. It's time to go. And we're tired, those of us who are building, but we know we're here. The Friday, they stopped at 1:30 in the morning, putting the floor in. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, they were here again. Why? Because we know it's time to prepare, to be there and by the side of the cannon with the decisions that we need to take, and it's those decisions that we need to take. And it's the ones that are going to take us, and they're going to take us to continue, whether we do it or we do it or not. That's why it's important to let go of everything that's in our heart and everything that we've been acquiring. So in the following verse, it says, verse 12 still. And that is why the Israelites are running from their enemies in defeat. For now Israel's defeat has been set apart for destruction. I will not remain with you any longer unless you destroy the things among you that were set apart for destruction. So verse 13, get up, command the people to purify themselves. Purify themselves in preparation for tomorrow. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says: Hidden among you, O Israel, are things set apart for the Lord. You will never defeat your enemies until you remove these things from among you. And that's why we need to stand up. That's why, and there's several things that we've been acquiring. And certain things that we've been taking, those aspects that were acquired during the crisis. And we have to close those doors again to be able to stand up and to say, like it says in Hebrews, we are not those that go back. Isn't it not like that? God hasn't given us a spirit. He's given us a spirit of self-control, of power. You have that spirit within you, not because you have it, but because Jesus has it. It's that spirit that has the tenacity, the strength from within us, that spirit of Jesus, that same spirit. He can do it. He's the one who can do it. The Lord has courage and valor. He has. That's what he can say categorically. You do not have a spirit of cowardice within you. No, you have a spirit of fighters. A spirit to continue ahead, to triumph. A spirit to put the effort in. A spirit that is going to continue in that same place, that continues doing for us to be able to stand before the Lord, even if we have difficult circumstances. And that's the message. That's the message today. We have to continue. When we think, Pastor, let's stop. No, we have to continue. And we have to continue with more strength, even if it's few. And we notice in this time that we've been able to see what has been in people's heart. Many have faltered. Many have started thinking in their house, should I come or should I not come back? How do I do it? Many have been thinking, and I've been thinking about it twice. And what about God? And God said to them, I'm still here. Because that's the spirit that we have. And they think, oh, I did it badly. Doesn't matter. Let go of everything. Anything that you've taken, and we're going to take that back and take those steps. 5 things that I've seen in a believer, in a church, in the last few days. And these are things that cover us, not those outside. First, the gaps in the past have come back. For many people, during the pandemic, their things have come back again. They've gone back to the sins that they had been able to conquer, to triumph over. For whatever reason, that opened up again. The infidelity, pornography, the gap of vengeance, of sins of passive that they had before. And the Bible tells us that opens up very, very small, and it starts threatening a whole destruction. The Bible tells us that our desire, that our sin is like a little crack that threatens destruction. So it's like that 30:13. It says, calamity will come upon you suddenly, like a bulging wall that bursts and falls. In an instant it will collapse and come crashing down. And this is what the enemy, and us, even in our sinful nature, even though we can say to the sin no, and now it has no power over us, but that we allow it, is the fight against those certain aspects that are sinful. And I've noticed that they've opened up for whatever reason. Perhaps because of the free time, the amount of things that have happened. And he wants to say in this today that it's necessary for you to close it. It's necessary for you to think of those things that are making you full in those excesses. In the same way that when the nation is calm and not doing anything, the enemy speaks louder and more seductively for us to continue opening those doors from the past. And if you're the type of person that there was a big group that was constantly working and doing things, but perhaps many had to stay home, and again small cracks started opening up. You have to analyze those. You have to think about those. What was it that opened up that was a small door? You didn't open it all, but you opened the little door. You peep through, you look through the little peeping hole of the door, and you saw very small, but you see everything that there was. Now is the time to close it, because that door cannot open up again. We have to be very conscious, and part of the maturity of the believer, of any person, is to know their limits. And if for you that's an open door, close it. Completely tie your hands and close the door. And close that little door that was open. Close that little hole that let you see to the past. Because otherwise it's going to take the strength away from the next days of fighting. And perhaps because of one person, the whole family can't continue. That's why it's important for you to do an examination in yourself and start thinking, what is it? What small things have been able to open up throughout these 3-4 months that have now been open? That was very little, and it's a slight back, but that slight back has to be taken away, because that's the first thing that God said to Joshua: go and look for me. And he examined. It's because of this person that is in this, the son of one of the 12 of Israel, in certain area, in that building, in that house, in that room. Then get rid of that, because that's not right. Can you be in this place in your home holding back the camp? What we want to do is to align everyone, and it doesn't matter how strange it could be, but get rid of it. The Bible says that we have now been cleaned. Then now we just have to clean our feet and prepare yourself to close those doors. The victory is the Lord's, but we have to close those doors seriously. And which are they? And you can't close it. You can't close a door that you don't want to close. And perhaps you don't want to close it. You have to say to the Lord, Lord, I don't want to close it, but give me the desire to close it. It's very important for the next steps that we need to give. Whatever it is, then you think about it and you know which one it is. And I don't want you to feel guilty, but I want you to feel moved. I want you to say, yeah, I have to go back. I have to start doing this. The holidays are over. And you know, there's some people that are going on holiday and then they go and they do what they want. And in this pandemic, it seems that no one saw me, there was no one there. We've changed our habits, our customs. You spend a lot of time at home. And some of the youth were even until really late in their homes. Perhaps they had time on the internet. Perhaps one of these guys has sinned. They were there. There was a lot of free time. And that free time, that causes doors to open up. And perhaps you think about it twice, but close the door so that God can give you the victory. And God can give you the victory in the following days. So the second aspect that he's been meditating about the church, is the meisms. And it sounds a bit strange, but it's centering yourself just on you. And he's been so shocked because that meism, that egoism, that egocentricity that this whole situation has caused, and that has continuing happening, has affected a lot of people. My house, my time, my husband, my wife. It's my home, my money. And so many have come and they're thinking, no, I can't do it because I feel like I'm not in the right place. And we've stopped thinking about other people and we've started thinking about ourselves. The cause of depression is me. It's focusing just on you. And maybe because of fear. Poor me. People who stop the camp because they have fear themselves. People who, for whatever reason, instead of focusing on other people, they started focusing on their own desires, their own satisfactions. And they forgot that the way of living a Christian life is focused on others. And that's why they fell into difficult situations. In the moment that you stop giving you stop receiving. In the moment, and if you're the type of person that was in the pandemic, going out and working, doing things, you'll see that you would come tired, happier, but because you gave. But if you stopped giving and you waited for others to give to you, then the time comes, the why. Because you want your desires and your rights to be fulfilled. So if you go to 1 Corinthians 10, verse 24, it says, "Don't be concerned for your own good, but for the good of others." Christian life cannot be lived thinking about yourself. That means is egoism. It's egocentricity. It brings depression. It makes you focus on me and stop everyone in my home, because it damaged the relationship with God. We weren't created to be focusing just on ourselves. And because we've been searching, giving ourselves pleasures, we've been thinking about ourselves, our mind continues, and it continues in the same way. That's why it's necessary for you to change your mind from I deserve it to you give it. And what's a person who deserves it? It's the one who thinks they deserve absolutely everything. Well, why don't they count on me? Well, why don't they do it for me? But if you start working and giving, you don't have time to think about yourself. And why are you thinking in yourself so much? Because you're not giving. You lift your gaze and start thinking about others. Lift up your gaze and stop centering yourself on you and asking for rights and give sacrifices. The person who deserves has everything themselves. They want everyone to fulfill their necessities. The person who gives has a responsibility continuous of doing something for others. And when we're talking about the home, we're not talking about the home, I'm not talking about church, I'm talking about your social life. Many stopped serving and stopped being because they wanted to focus on my job, on my life, on my this. They started claiming their rights. And in the moment that you start claiming your own rights, in that moment, you stop giving and you stop being a giver. Christian life works better when you don't ask for your rights, but you die to yourself to serve others. And John says it's necessary for me to come down so Christ grows in me. And that's why Paul says in Philippians 2, verse 5, he says, "You must have the same attitude." It's necessary for us to let go of all egocentricity. It's necessary for us to stop thinking and going ahead without thinking, by stopping thinking on yourself. And I was thinking about it in the last few weeks when we were working here, and we were working with people who weren't thinking to the end. And in certain occasions, certain people would say, my time, my hours. The difference between serving and doing a favor is a big difference. Doing a favor is coming to do something and then I go. But coming to serve is they're capable of giving everything. And if we want to continue in this time, we're going to have to let go of our rights, because that means that you're going to have contact with other people who might have the virus. And I'm not talking about being imprudent. It's about stopping thinking about ourselves and continue walking, because there's a lot of necessity. We would pass through, as an example, what we were doing here, 14, 15 hours, doing, and you know for who? For you. For the whole church. But you know why? Because we feel as givers. It's necessary for you to go back to your mentality of giver. Because in the moment that you stop feeling like a receiver, that you deserve it, you get comfortable. And the only thing you want are your rights. Are just rights. I want people to look after me. I want them to do things to me, to tell me. And that's why when you come back to normality, you feel completely shocked, because now no one is thinking about you. because everyone is thinking about others. And that's why it's necessary as a church for us to work on our egocentrism. And in this time, the rejection, loneliness has opened up. But who told you were alone? I didn't have time to feel depressed. And we worked on it, and we worked on it the whole time. Why? Because I didn't have time to focus on myself. And Sandy was in hospital, and for all of us, many things happened, but no depression. Because we were focused on ourselves, because we were looking at a church that we had to work on and continue. And it's you guys. That's why we'd leave late and tired, and we'd be constantly thinking, to whom are we giving? It's necessary for us to give. It's necessary to put the effort in for others. It's necessary to put the effort in for the cause, for the work. Put the effort in. Start working with others. So you don't have time to think about your problems, to focus on them. When you see that your arm's broken, and then you start feeling that pain because of everything that you're lacking, look at someone who doesn't have an arm and you think, whoa, I have nothing to complain about. And that's what's happened in this time. People who continue, and when you look at people in this country and you compare it to countries like Colombia, South America, who have nothing, and we have it. You know what we are? We're a nation that's full of meisms. There, where they have to go out and they have to continue go out with so many necessities, whereas here they're paying 80% of your salary, and people are in their homes. So you can't constantly keep thinking about yourself and not taking a decision and winning those battles that you need to take, those victories that God has given, because the victories that God gives are victories because we think of others. That's why it says that the same attitude that Christ had, though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He let go of your privileges, so that no longer you live, but Christ lives in you. And you know, the great problem with many homes is that the man or the woman, I don't know, that doesn't want to let go of their privileges. He doesn't look at me, he doesn't treat me nice, and they think he doesn't do it. And you know what that is? At the end of the day, they want privileges. But what if you start letting go of these privileges and continue ahead? The world will be super easy because we're not designed to focus on ourselves. It's not your kingdom, it's the kingdom of God. It's not my kingdom. When we do this act, this work, we don't do it for me, for David and Al. We're doing this for God. And you think about it. What things are causing you to focus on yourself? Do you feel pain? Well, I have news for you. This pain is produced because of your meism. Because we're rich. Have you seen? In a country with certain incredible characteristics, in a good church with good help, no one can focus that they haven't had any help. If you haven't had any help, it's because you haven't looked for it. And those who have looked for help and don't have it, it's because they haven't accepted it. No, for any other reason. We're very well. And I look at everyone very well. Our youth are great. They haven't lacked anything. The youth that I see, the one has an iPhone or a Samsung, the last model phone, good clothes, but we focus on ourselves, and that's the problem. If we don't let go of these things that are in our interior, that's kingdom that's in our mind, we're not going to win the following battle. Today, I call you to say, let go of everything, let go of that meisms, let go of that pride, that egoism, that everything revolves around you. Everything should revolve around God. And he is the one who should be exalted. Amen? Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God. The key to Jesus Christ was that he humbled himself. And another thing that we've seen in this time is control. Control of the families came back to the families. And it seems like there's a spiritual pandemic, and it's the pandemic of control. The men came back to lose or to lower in their authority, to allow and to relegate incorrectly. The women to take over, to change the roles. Again, the control over the children over the parents. And we've seen that in so many homes. And we think there are very key reasons. They're not knowing how to be home. They're not knowing your roles. The reawakening. And as a church, every church is different. And this church, we've worked on this. Our church works hard with managing control in the homes, because it's important to stand up and to think again and think, how am I? And that's why one of the strategies that we've done in the last few weeks is to take back the control of cell groups and to work about it. But who says to a woman that she's controlling if they don't want to? She doesn't want to accept it. What father will allow to be told that they're controlling and they're under that spirit of control of Jezebel if they don't want to look at something else? And this is one of the biggest obstacles spiritually that there is. And we're sure, and we have said it many, many times, that control is one of the biggest enemies of the end of times for the believer. The control in the households, the form of the families. The Bible tells us in Revelations 2 verse 20, but I have this complaint against you, and I've repeated it before. I have this complaint against you. And what does God have to complain against you? That you are permitting that woman. In another verse it says tolerate. But God has against the believers, and even now, and even definitely against with us as well, with this concept that we permit, that we tolerate that spirit. He's not saying I have something against you. He doesn't say that you have it. He's saying that there's a point where the spirit of control is going to be over so many homes. And I said it last week, a couple of weeks ago, talking about authority. Authority has to maintain. It's one of the concepts that's clearest and cleanest that we should have. It's one of the strongest columns that there is. But because of that, that's why it has given us the crisis in the homes. The crises that we have in in every home and on every level has to do with authority. And he thinks that the person that's damaging, that's changing it, this decadence, is the spirit of control. At the end of the time, there'll be a society where the man doesn't know how to be man, the woman won't know how to be a woman. Where manipulation will be the order of the day, because everyone will need to have their desires completely fulfilled. This whole desire of being politically correct is that no one wants to hear the truth, and if you tell them the truth will hurt. So then they need to manipulate, and manipulating will end up ruining society in the homes. That's why it's important for you to go back and look at your home, look at your house, and see how this aspect is in my life. What is happening? How are my children reacting? Do they submit? How is my home? How is my partner? What effects of manipulation are there? The spirit of control is going to damage it. Why? Because it's going to try and use up God's authority. This conflict that we have in these times with identity, they come from the spirit of control. All of this that you're seeing now, where the man now doesn't want to be a man, where the woman doesn't want to be a woman anymore, where we see the conflicts of identity with the sexuality, they all come from the same base. And everything comes tied back to authority and to roles. If the man doesn't want to be a man in his home, He's tolerating that spirit. And when I say the man doesn't want to be a man, he doesn't want to be. He doesn't mean being a massive macho. He's saying about using authority correctly and rolling and taking over that role correctly. And the same as the woman, where she doesn't have that her role correctly and doesn't want to use it properly. And that's what destroys homes and society and the identity of the human and in churches. That's why it's necessary for you to stand up and purify your home. Purify your homes, not just saying we're gonna pray for this for certain things. No, it's analyzing and you're thinking about your home and think, how is my home with regards to these aspects? In what thing do I have to fight? In what things do I need to sort out? Perhaps you're manipulating through whatever situation that isn't the right path of the Lord. So I want you to think about that enemy that we have, that thing that we have to let go of. The power is very good. And when we come into those homes and we went into those 3 months, the spirit of power and the desire to have the power in the relationship made it that there was a lack of equilibrium. And it's that the conflicts that we had were products of this. The Lord isn't angry because we have to fight it. The Lord is bothered by the fact that we permit it. What the Lord doesn't like is not for you to have to fight it. The Lord hasn't got a problem with that. If you have a situation, fight it. What's the problem? If you don't know how to fight it until we are fighting it, and you can come out of continue with the subject, we'll be with you. The problem is when you don't want to fight it. And I can imagine from God, when he sees a home that's falling down, a couple, a situation, in all this time, and you think, well, why don't they do anything? It doesn't matter if you don't know how to do it. We'll try and teach you. It's this, the control that there is, and that it will take away the power, and that can take away the power of the church. Because we need youth and healthy couples. But if you start working with a person and you work and work and work, and everything goes back to the fact that they don't let go of their control. And the same is with the homes. Because the spirit drains every good concept. And there is no change. That's why it's necessary to look with bravery, with courage. And the fourth aspect that he's seen is distractions. We go to 2nd of Samuel, verse 11, chapter 11, verse 1. This is what it says about David. Distractions are everything. It's things that we focus our, given our focus to, our strength to. So in the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, so it's preaching in the spring of the year, David had to go out to war. There's a time for everything. In the time when the kings would go out to battle, David sent Joab and the Israelites' army to fight the Ammonites. They destroyed the Ammonite army and laid siege to the city of Rabbah. However, and this is the focus, however, because when there's a however, there's a but, there's a problem. David stayed behind in Jerusalem. David stayed behind in Jerusalem. He was distracted. In verse 2, late one afternoon, after his midday rest, all the men were out fighting. After midday rest, so David got out of bed and was walking on the roof of the palace. As he looked out over the city, he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. David was distracted from the important things. It was a time when the kings were meant to be doing something else. And he was completely unfocused. God, everything tries to unfocus us. And there's going to be a great job. There's going to be special things. You're going to have situations that'll be wonderful, apparently. Things, urgent situations. But don't separate yourself from the principles. Christian life is forged on columns. And when you let go of take away those columns and work on the roof or something else, everything will fall down. And that's what happened to David. And in the following verse he says, so he just saw the woman. Then in verse 3 he says, he sent someone to find out who she was. And he was told, she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite. And what did they tell her? That she was married. In verse 4, then David sent messengers to get her. And why did David fall so much in that time? Why did he fall in that situation? Because he was distracted. And I'm sure that if David had been in the battle fighting, he wouldn't have had time to look at anything. There wouldn't have been a woman that he would have seen. He wouldn't have been with nothing to do. And you know what happens? Through the service that we give sometimes, we say, well, why don't we give this person a rest? Why don't we give, because the person thinks that rest isn't to recuperate and to continue. But they get distracted. They think that rest, they don't think that it's for them to regain the strength to continue, but they think that rest is just to let go of everything and they unfocus themselves, their lives, and they fall into sin. Or they fall into distractions. So in verse 4, when she came to the palace, he slept with her. She had just what things are distracting you? You know, there's a world that's called the Babylonian that's now tempting everyone for us to get off the boat. You have to close that door. The lack of doing anything is something that's very damaging. And you've seen couples that they play and someone then goes off and you think, well, how can you have a couple now that they're not focused on giving everything in their homes? What are their children going to see? Children need to see fathers who work outside. Children need to see mothers who are giving it all in their homes, that can stand in front of the reality. But then I see people who are full of women who are princesses. We don't have mothers, we do have princesses, daughters. And I say this worried, because what was being built, what's coming to light, is that they stopped being strong women, mothers of multitudes, women that are capable of going ahead in the family and taking their kids out. But now, because they're all princesses and princes, we just see a bunch of more Cinderellas and princes everywhere. But because we think that a whole family is forged in that way, and it's all distractions. It's the desire of fulfilling our own desires, our personal desires. We have to go back to the system, to the correct design, and let go of all those things. Men who can continue, not distracted, focused, whatever it is, working, and women that do the same thing. We can't bring up a new generation of little princes and princesses, and that's worrying, because it's going to be a generation that's going to be like a straw, empty inside. And I'm talking to the mothers that are here. We need to stand up, women, and lift up your husband for them to continue ahead, and forging them, not letting them go. You should be there. You should be the first one speaking, and the men should be the same, showing and doing, with a bunch of children following behind. And one of the things that's spectacular that happened to us, and we used to say, there's a lot of different little things that are badly painted, or certain things, or little details that are not right within the construction, or little loose. But our youth did those. And we'd say those to them. I'd rather a church with little details made by the youth, or something that's perfect made by the grown-ups. Because we're creating a generation that's courageous and brave and goes ahead. We're in a different spiritual environment, and what the world wants to give us is exactly that. Stand up, let go of your meisms and fight for what God has to give you. And there are youth that are now in relationships that will have to do this in the future, but they give a home with strength, a home with that can give others to Christ, that can form nations and be parents and be true parents and roles that they want to follow. That's what's needed, and with character, but you have to be strong to do it. Though your heart has to be transformed, and it's difficult, and it takes courage, and it takes valor. And we think that these things are just gold and that was it, and we don't want to do anything. We don't want to do the work that we need to do, and we're within a very difficult work. It's not time to stop, it's to continue. And David was distracted, and that's when his form of his kingdom came. Stand up. The authority of Jesus Christ has been given to you. In your spirit is the spirit that is of power and of self-control, and it's the spirit of Jesus Christ, and it's the spirit that demands, that has the tenacity that it needs to give. And so let it flow. In one way or another, it's going to have to show. So let it flow and stand up and go towards your goals. And the fifth thing that he's seen is fear, and he's repeated it through several different preachings. And he sees people with fear. And fear is one of the biggest enemies that we have. But there's nothing to fear. The concept, the state, the government, different things have been telling us, and we have to be prudent. But we cannot be fearful. That fear that makes us reduce to not take the chance of what's to come, to not taking those steps of faith. Fear is very bad advice giver. So we go to the case of Peter. In Matthew 26. Meanwhile, Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant girl came over and said to him, "You were one of those with Jesus the Galilean." And Peter was with Jesus. He saw how Jesus changed the environment. He saw where Jesus had arms where there were none, where he fed multitudes, where he calmed multitudes that wanted to stone him. He saw all the miracles that Jesus did. He started them in his own town in Capernaum. He saw how Jesus did all these things. The shine of glory from Jesus. Peter saw that. But here we see him denying him. And the Bible says to us in verse 70, "But Peter denied it in front of everyone. 'I don't know what you're talking about,' he said." Later, out by the gate, another servant girl noticed him and said to those standing around, This man is Jesus of Nazareth." Again, Peter denied it. This time with an oath. "I don't even know the man," he said. In verse 73, a little later, some of the other bystanders came over to Peter and said, "You must be one of them. We can tell by your Galilean accent." Peter swore, "A curse on me if I'm lying." "I don't know the man." And immediately the rooster crowed. What makes a person deny Christ, a believer? Fear. And I know that many of us are not going to deny him outside, because we're not even in situations where we need to deny him. But I do know that many will deny Christ because they will be fearful of facing their life with Christ. Many will deny Christ because in their hearts, at the end of the day, to being transformed, in their character and everything that they need to do, they're going to say, no, I don't know Christ. They don't deny Christ because when you don't just deny Christ when you say, no, I don't want to be with you, or I'm not a disciple of Christ. You deny Christ when because of what I do, I'm not faithful to him. Many are going to deny Christ with their own way of being. And they'll say to him, Lord, you're not my provider. Because they weren't able to believe in the situations that he needed to be. They needed to say, you're not a good father. Because in their lives, they couldn't change their family and put themselves under the word of God. They're going to say, you're not the God that you say you are financially, because you're going to be fearful of looking for other jobs. You're going to deny Christ. And people say, you don't know Christ. And say, no, I'm not a Christian for this. And think about it. Will you deny Christ in your actions? Many of us deny Christ with our actions. And that is what we have to let go of. The fear. Fear of what? That things change. Many like and love the status quo because they don't have to put the effort in, because they have the fear of doing something differently. I've seen couples to have fought the whole time within them, and they didn't change because of fear of change. Simple as that. Or for having fear that the other person was in the right, or they were fearful that they weren't in the right. And that's what happens so many times. That's why we stand up, church, and we ask the Lord, Lord, we want to let go of these things that we've done in the last few months. Let go of control. Let go of those closed doors, of those open doors, of those things that are distracting us, that are entertaining us. Let go of the fear. But stand up and put yourself in the hands of the Lord. Because in the next times, we're going to have to be before the Lord.